Our user group webinar. My name is Jim. I'm coming to you live on a breezy day here in Columbus, Ohio. Welcome on in. We're going to be spending approximately the next 20 minutes talking about the backup and restore features built into Church Windows, as well as managing and using the security features. Before we go ahead and get started on that, a quick word about your GoToWebinar control panel that you have there on your screens. You're going to have a small, usually red arrow button, usually in the upper left-hand corner of that control panel, that you can click it to either collapse that control panel to give you a little bit more room to see what we're doing in our presentation here today. You can click it again to expand it, to give you access to the different features there, kind of specifically that questions portion. I will be answering questions that come through during our presentation at the end of our session here today. Please keep the questions on the topic of backup and security. With that all being said, let's go ahead and take a look at this. We will be running today from Church Windows version 21.18.4. That's our current version of the program. And all of the features that I'll be talking about today will be for that version. Many of them also are from earlier versions of the program as well, but specifically that's what we'll be running from here today. So we'll begin talking about the backup features in Church Windows. You can access those by opening up your administration menu on your opening portal here for Church Windows, where you will see both a backup as well as a restore feature. Now, the Church Windows backup feature that we have available is something that we recommend using so that you can back your data up to a source that we would recommend you be able to take off-site with you. Small USB drives, some people call them flash drives or thumb drives, are ideal for this because you can just kind of plug them into your computer, run a backup of your data to that USB drive, and then be able to unplug it and carry it off-site with you. Because if something were to happen at the church, if there were a fire or a theft or something along those lines, if you are backing up your data to your local computer, if you lose your computer, you'll lose your backups as well. So we do recommend backing up to one of those USB drives so that you can take it off-site with you in case of a disaster like that. I do happen to have one of those USB drives plugged into my computer that I'm running the presentation from right now. Let me go ahead and show that again. If you go to your administration menu, you click on backup on this menu, and it takes you to this window. There are two checkboxes in the upper left-hand corner here. You'll notice that there is only a full backup that you can run, so it takes all of your data and sends it to your backup. And you can, if you choose, to also include any pictures that you may store in your membership module if you have pictures of your members stored there. Below that, you'll see the path to where you're backing your data up to, and over to the right of that, you'll have a browse button. This is where you'll be able to click and then go find the location where you want to run your backup, whether that's like a shared folder on your network or, as I said, an external drive that you can use. So if I expand where it says computer here, you will see here's my USB drive called PK Back on here. So you select that drive, click OK from here. It's now going to back up to the E drive as we see right here, and then we'll simply click Begin Backup right here. Goes through, takes all of your databases that you have in the Church Windows program, compresses them, makes them smaller so that then you've got that backup available for you. Once it is done, completed running through, you'll get your backup completed successfully message like this. Clicking on OK will allow you to then exit out of your backup window. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what we're doing with this. Let me bring this window over here. If I click on my Windows Explorer and take a look at our PK back, you will see that the backups that you run are given unique names so that you're not overwriting them time after time as you run your backups. The one we just created here is the 0509-2019. Just ran it right here. You'll see if you run multiple backups to the same directory, they will be named with date and time stamps for when they've been created there. Okay. 14 meg file, this is on an average size database here. It does compress those files to make them a little bit more manageable. So from time to time, you may want to pare these down so that you're not sucking up all the space on wherever you're running your backups to. And that's really all there is to running a backup of your data. Now, the other side of that equation, which you may or may not ever need to use, is restoring your data. The main reason why we're running these backups is just in case of some kind of an emergency where something happens to your computer, or if you have to run a new installation of Church Windows in a different location, so that then you can restore your data that you have backed up. It's basically like moving all your entire databases and all of your work from one location to another. So in those types of situations where you would need to restore data, if you have a new installation on a new computer or anything along those lines, using the restore feature is done from your administration menu and clicking on restore. Takes you to this window right here, our restore window. You have a browse button over here to the right that will allow you to go locate your backup. It automatically kind of defaults to the last place you ran a backup on your computer. So if you're regularly backing up to that USB drive, when you click your browse button, that's the first place it looks. So here's all of the backups that we have run. I can select any of these. If I have an older one that I want to restore for whatever reason, I may have posted some transactions that I made mistakes on and I kind of want to go back to the night before to overwrite them. And that's an important point here. Any of these backups that we restore will be overwriting the data that we have in Church Windows with the contents of the backup that we have here. So if I were to select a month-old backup or older and I restored it, I might lose some of my data entry that I might have on my installation in the meantime. So selecting a particular backup here and clicking on open kind of reads into that file, and then it gives you this window here. So if you've got pictures here, you'll notice that we've got a data selection, a picture selection, a report layouts selection here. You can click on the small plus button to the left of any of these and it will expand that view and show you the contents there. So you see here we've got, if I select the one in the middle here, this one is CW Memdon. If you look in this middle column, this is your membership and donations databases. It'll show you the size of those files and the date of the backup when it was run. You'll also notice that there's little check boxes over here. So this is where if for whatever reason here, let's say you have a treasurer who works from home and they want to be able to restore this data on their home computer, but they don't need the membership and donations information, just as an example, you can uncheck this. And you'll get a little message here that we don't recommend restoring accounting separately from donations because the system kind of keeps track of donations batches and their corresponding transfers over in the accounting module. So every time you open up accounting, it's going to look into donations, see all of your batches there, and then make sure that you have matching postings over in accounting, because one of the things you can do after posting a donations batch is to transfer it over into accounting. And this bit at the bottom here where it says, if you choose to restore either module's data separately, please follow the instructions when you open either module the first time after restoring. Sometimes what you will see if you restore a newer accounting backup on older donations data, just as an example, you may have some transactions sitting in accounting that do not have matching donations batches over in donations. And if that were to happen, Church Windows will tell you, these are the donations batches that exist in accounting that do not exist over in donations. And then it'll tell you exactly what they are and give you some recommendations. You may need to delete those in accounting to make both match. You may also need to post those donations transactions. So that's just kind of a warning, and that's kind of why we don't usually recommend it. But if you have a treasurer, you can kind of only restore that one module and do it in that manner. You'll also see all of the pictures if you expand that, all these pictures for the folks in your database. Super useful information there. Same with report layouts. If you have particular reports that you have saved, those are individually selectable at the time of restore as well. Usually if you're on here, you're just going to check everything, restore everything. Clicking on begin restore over here in the lower right hand corner will make all of that happen. Okay. And note about sort of storage on a USB drive. Modern USB drives, you know, they're going to be several gig in size, right? These backups are pretty small, 14 meg. So it would take a lot of these backups to fill up a USB drive. If you're at all keeping track of your information on here, you're not going to really run into running out of space on any modern USB drive. Okay. So that's backing up and restoring. Let's take a look at security. When you first install Church Windows, you're going to have like a little icon on your desktop. Double clicking on that icon is going to launch your program. If you do not have any security set up in the Church Windows program, it is simply, once it's done kind of making sure that everything's okay with the databases, we'll simply open you up right here into Church Windows, and you'll be able to do anything you need to in the program. Open any of the modules, add, edit, delete, whatever. But you can, in our program, set up usernames and passwords that will then kind of allow you to control access to the program. That is all set up here on your administration menu, right here where it says security. Normally, when you first open up this window, when you first start using the Church Windows program, you won't see these names listed down here down the left side of the screen the way we do here. But if you have folks set up usernames and passwords, you may see a series of names listed over here. Let me go ahead and select K. Williams's record here. Notice there's a button down here in the lower left-hand corner to make active. That means that this, as we see listed right here, if you can see that this is an inactive record or an inactive login for Church Windows, which means you can't use this at the current time. If I click my Make Active button, you'll see that there's a full name here There's a username listed below that, and that's what you need to type in, that you need to know that to type that in for the username screen. And then a password would be entered right here. So I'll just kind of go through and talk briefly about the different permissions you can set up for users here in the system, and then we'll kind of take a look and see how that works in practice here. So you'll notice that there are a series of tabs that go along the top of the screen here. There's a section here under System where you set these permissions. Allow user access to security screens, which is the first one right here. That checkbox basically means that you have access to this window that allows you to make changes for all of your usernames and passwords in the system. If this is unchecked, you still, if you're using that username and password, you still have access to very limited things on this window. You can still kind of change your password, but you can't edit any of the permissions on here. So this is the keys to the kingdom. This allows you to change settings for everybody in the system. There's a checkbox below that for whether or not you have access to restore backups in the system. And then the system information windows, which is, I can't show it here, but access to licensing, the system profile, things along those lines, whether you have full access to system information, whether you can just kind of read it only, or whether you have no access to it at all. Along the top, you'll see tabs for the various portions of church windows. So if we go to membership, for example, there's one checkbox up here at the top that is an overall access to the entire membership module right here. If you uncheck that, you are denying access to the entirety of the membership module. Beyond that, you're going to see a list of different portions of that module listed down in order here, and a grid of different levels of permissions listed over to the right of it. So for example, access to the people window in membership, as you look over here to the right, you have access to simply view the information on that window, whether you're going to create new records in that portion, modify existing records in that portion, or delete records in that portion. So you'll see these go down the list for all of these different portions of the program. The people window, and this is all kind of granular control you have over what everybody can do in the program. So this person, K here, can view the people window but can't create records, modify records, or delete records. As I'm making changes here, you'll kind of see some changes in other parts as well. User definable fields, list field codes. If you don't have access to one part of the program, you may not automatically have access to another. And you can go down your list. We don't have any access to groups and classes. You can kind of change these things as you kind of look down your list. In the sections below are other parts of these various modules of the program. So we're looking at, in membership specifically, whether they have access to mass editing records, transferring individuals between families, etc. These are all specific to these different modules in the program. So if I were to come in here, kind of limit some of these permissions to the people window, etc., you'll see there's separate permissions to the attendance portion of the program, the personal visits portion of the program, and on down the line. Access to scheduler kind of works all the same way. Settings for these individual modules and how you're going to set this up. So I'm going to show you an example of how this can end up looking. I'm going to allow Kay here to have full access to the donations module. I'm going to come over here to accounting, and I'm going to remove access to this portion. When I save and close here and exit the program, Now you'll notice the next time I open up the program, since I do have a user set up in the system, it's now going to ask me, once we get to the window here in just a moment, to enter in a username and a password. Now, if you don't have a valid username and password, if I type my name in here and type in whatever password here, and I try to click OK to come into the system, it's not going to allow me in if I don't know an appropriate username and password. So if I come in here and I go with K's record and click OK, if I put in my username and password correctly, it will bring me into the program, and now I'll be using the permissions I set for that username and password. So you'll notice if I click on accounting, I do not have permission to access this. If I were to come into donations, I would have full access there. If I come into membership, the way I had just set it up, here in the people window, I will not have access to editing these records. I gave permission to view these records, but not to make changes to them. So once I come into this screen, if I try to make any changes, I can't click in any of these fields and make changes. It will not allow me to do so. I do not have access to that. You'll notice up here at the top where I'm looking at delete individual, there's a little lock here. It's not going to allow me to do that. Okay. So that is kind of how you set permissions for folks who use the Church Windows program. If I come back to administration and go back to security one more time, you'll notice that I did set up K with access to the security screens, which means I can see all of these things here. If I needed to create new records in the system here, I can use my add button right here to add a new user for if we have a new employee that comes in. If I click add, it's going to create a new user. And I can go through and set permissions for our new user that we've got here set up in the system. Once we're done with all that, we can click our Save Permissions button here, and you've got your new username and password that can be used to access the system. So if I set myself up with access into the system here, but I don't permit access to the security screens, this is the last thing I kind of want to show you here, and I log in with my information, it will allow me to get into the different parts of the program, but it will not allow me access to adding new users and changing security information in the system. Oop. So I'm now logged in as Jim, that user account I just created. If I come to administration and security, at this point, when I come here, all I see is my information. I don't see the other users. And I can change my password if I want to, but I can't change anything else because I don't have access to the security screens. I cannot edit this stuff at all. All I can do is change my password to get into Church Windows. Cool. So that's all of the information I have for you guys. That is a primer on backing up and restoring data in the Church Windows program, as well as setting up usernames and passwords. I'd like to thank you guys so much for joining me here today. Feel free to get on with your day if you so choose. Go ahead and click on the X in the upper right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar control panel. For everybody who's out of here, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a good rest of your day.